A lot of people come to me and ask about how to be successful when you have a lot of difficulties in your life or you're struggling with something. And my answer is truly like as a human being outside of your faith and all of those factors. I think, of course, that's the number one key to being successful. Um, I would say is a disciplined mind. And when I say that to people, they look at me kind of funny, like, well, what do you mean? And so the best way that I can explain it is to remind people that your mind and your brain are not the same thing. Your mind is your consciousness, your spiritual self that comes from God, and your brain is a physical organ in your head. And it is. It's an organ. It's like your kidneys or your liver, and it is higher functioning. It stores and retrieves data. It regulates some processes in the body. It's definitely a complicated organ. um, but our mind is our conscious self, and it's supposed to run our brain, not our brain run us. And people forget, or don't even understand. I know I didn't for a very long time, that the brain is not about looking for truth. It really doesn't know the difference between a truth or a lie. It knows what you teach it. It is designed to repeat information back to you, to pull it up, kind of like a database. Oh, hey, that triggers that thought right there. There's some knowledge that we can pull up and draw on. And that's wonderful when it's good stuff and it's things that we need to remember, or things that we can think of that are positive. But it's not so great whenever that process kicks in and it's something negative, or, um, we have this tape, we call it the tape in the back of our head. And it's the thing that replays the negative messages that we heard as a child or as a young adult, or even in our adulthood when we had a negative experience. And when you have your brain repeating things to you, that it's like the person who was abusing you or the situation, it doesn't need to continue, because your brain will keep feeding that loop back to you, because a familiar emotion or a familiar situation, it pings that memory, if you will. And then that's the tape that begins to play, because the brain says, oh, we're familiar with that. We know what to do. When A happens, we're going to pull up B and we're going to play B. So it's not based on truth, but we think when we have a thought that comes with a really strong emotion, we assume it to be true. So one of the best things that you can do is discipline your mind to override when your brain is engaging in things that are not beneficial, like old things that were said to you that that are not valid, logically, but emotionally it will feel true. And learning to battle those things, to kick those things out of your head and say, there's no room for that anymore. I need to speak truth to myself. Positive affirmations are great, and they can be very beneficial, but the real benefit comes when you begin to like really examine and dispute those things in your head and say, is that true? Where's the evidence for that? And to remember that it's not necessarily a fact just because your brain is feeding it back to you. So when you begin to examine your thoughts and ask, where did that message come from? And is that something that I truly believe about myself? And why do I believe that about myself? And what can I do to change that belief? How can I speak differently to myself about it? How can I go about disputing that with evidence that counteracts that negative statement? Well, for an example, I'm not enough, I'm not good enough. Well, that message is an emotional message that comes from maybe verbal messages as a child, or feelings of failure, feelings of not being good enough. And when we have those messages in our head and we never question them, we just assume they're true because of the strong emotion that goes with them, we engage in the perpetuation of that message. So if you really want to break free from negative thought patterns, you have to begin to really examine your thoughts and ask, where did that come from and where's the evidence for that? And not answer from an emotional position, but a factual position that says, well, that's what it feels like. And even though that I know that it feels true, there is evidence to dispute that. So paying attention to your thoughts, remembering that your brain is an organ and you need to use your mind to override your brain can be very beneficial.